For over 15 years, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mandel. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by Play Now, the official sports betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets, starts now.
Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. I just always wanted to do that. It is a special Sunday edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. We say good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. And for all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to a special Sunday edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, getting you set for the Jets and the Wild later on this afternoon. It's a busy day today. You have the Jets, you have football, you have everything under the sun, and most importantly, you have two Illegal Curve broadcasts. Gentlemen, good to see you both. Nice to see you on this special Sunday edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Ezzy, the light is shining on you. It makes you look radiant, vibrant, vivacious, everything that we want to see in you.
Yeah, it's a nice sunny Sunday morning here, boys, but you can't tell this right now, but I've actually got a blanket around my body. Dave M's house right now is 61 degrees. So we have a little heat issue happening at the Manouk Casa, but nonetheless, we're still going to, keep going here. But I do have a big, thick blanket wrapped around my thighs because it's freezing in this house.
And we know that Ezzy's got some good sized thighs there as well. So, Dave, let me ask you this.
Thunder thighs, actually.
Is it a deliberate attempt to freeze Ginsburg out, or is there a problem with the furnace?
Oh, no. I'm freezing Ginsburg out. I've been slowly poisoning him. That wasn't working. He's like immune to that. So that I figured I got to figure out a different way. He shockingly, is a little genteel when it comes to the cold. So I'm not
actually. I've got 250 pounds of lard to deal with here, but I actually asked Dave for a toque. Like I was assuming Dave had like 30 icy toques in his house. He couldn't find me an icy toque.
Well, so some are in the icy museum, and I didn't want to share.
Keep you warm.
Well, hate to see that it's going to come down to Ezzy living in an ice box in order for us to broadcast the show. Dave seems quite comfortable. It must be the fire above his head.
Exactly. I'm rather content. Plus, I'm also decided Ezzy's insisted on wearing a t-shirt, he could wear a hoodie that he's got. But
I have to represent the brand here, Dave. You for sure have a heater on up there, by the way.
No, I'm warm-blooded.
Heat rises. Dave's on the upper part of the house, so it just must be
socks.
It must be glorious.
Although we should really start. I mean, Matt Hyman's pointing out the poisoning made Eddie's facial hair fall out. It did make his facial hair fall out, but it did make the top of his head. He's looking fresh cut right now.
I got a haircut yesterday. Thanks, Carrie at Ultra Cuts on Taylor. Great little haircut. My hair was getting out of control. My beard was way too big for this time of year. Usually I let the beard really go in November, December, January, February. So
when you double as a mall Santa. So that makes sense. Yeah,
exactly.
In any event, let's get into some hockey talk on this Sunday morning. As I mentioned, the Jets and the Wild a little bit later on this afternoon. We're all about that. Ken Wiebe's going to join us in about 10 minutes time. A big trip to the buffet. Nothing like a Sunday morning buffet. And that's where Kenny's going to join us to talk about that. But let me start with this. We've seen the Jets play 2 games. One game was certainly better than the other. The Jets have still garnered 2 victories. So, the things are on a positive trend so far if 2 games does indeed make a trend. So let me ask you sort of a general question to start. What is your sort of top impression of this Winnipeg Jets team through 2 games? I'm going to start with you this morning, Dave.
Whoa, so unexpected.
I know. I thought on Sundays, I throw a curveball.
Yeah, I guess that
Dave, he's going to the warmer person out of the two of them.
I don't want to hear his teeth chattering for the next 10 minutes.
Yeah, no. Look, you don't lament being 2-0, having 4 points banked in the standings bank. You just put them behind you and you try and improve on the things that weren't great in the 2 games. But at the same time, you are happy to be in the position that you're in, battling those Utah hockey clubs for top spot in the Central or whatever they're called. But I just think that the Jets, one thing is certain. I think, and we weren't 100% because you never know. Connor Hellebuck is in Vezina form. Connor Hellebuck is like, 1 goal on 56 shots. He is looking excellent. And that would be my initial kind of biggest takeaway of the first 2 games of the season so far, boys, is the
Which
fact
is
that
arguably the most important part that you'd want from the Winnipeg Jets.
no question about it. And so to me, that was though my biggest takeaway after 2 games was that Connor Hellebuck looked ready to go. From game 1, he looks like a man who is determined. And of course, when you're a 2-time Vezina winner, that's not a shock, but you always want to see that that's how you're going to start. And that's exactly how the Jets did start. And he was excellent against the Oilers. He was excellent against the Blackhawks. And so from that perspective, that would be my biggest takeaway from these first 2 games is that Connor Hellebuck is Connor Hellebuck. Not to say that I'm terribly shocked by it, but that would just, like I said, that's kind of what stands out to me from these first 2 games, Ezzy.
Yeah, and before I get into my things that stand out to me, I already gave Drew a shout out before we went live, but that shirt, that Louisville Slugger shirt, Drew, chef's kiss, never looked better.
Thank you.
But I think Scheifele, Connor Velarde, I think through the first 2 games, I think that they've stood out in terms of the way that they've played. Obviously, the first game against Edmonton, it was the Lowry line that was doing the majority of they had 6 different goal scorers. It was scoring by committee, but it was really that Lowry line
that was the driving force. That was the driving dominant. Yes,
right. And then obviously Scheifele, Connor Velarde scored the goals on the power play, but Scheifele has been the story, guys. 3 goals in the first 2 games, but that line has looked really good. Like I'd have to check Natural Stat Trick for how many shot attempts they had in the game against Chicago. But we talked about it. Velarde had a couple of good scoring chances before Scheifele tied it up late in the third period.
19 is the answer.
19 shot attempts. There you go.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that line was excellent. And you should be able to be excellent against Chicago, even though I keep saying this to, people that I work with at Hockey Manitoba, and I tell you guys this, anybody who'll listen, the Chicago team is not bad. I realized they beat Edmonton last night. Like, they're not just a one-trick pony. Like, it's not just the Connor Bedard show. Like, when you bring in Tyler Bertuzzi, Teuvo Teravainen's playing on that top line. Phil Kurashev had his breakout year last year. You bring in Martinez and Brody on the back end. Brossoit when he comes back from injury, right? So the Blackhawks are not a joke. So I just wanted to get that in there. I thought, even though the Jets didn't score until 65 seconds left, that Blackhawks team came into Winnipeg and played well. So I think the Nemesnikov, Ehlers, Perfetti line, there's more to be desired from that line. It's only 2 games, and we do have to factor in Perfetti didn't get a full training camp, right? So that could be factoring it a little bit. But Perfetti, guys, he was sitting a little bit. Scott O'Neill wasn't playing him a little bit in that third period. Partially because they were double shifting the Scheifele line to get some offense. But I think starting tonight or this afternoon, whatever you want to call it, against the Minnesota Wild, I think you want to see definitely more out of the Nemesnikov line. And we're not going to get too excited after 2 or 3 games, guys. But if we're still talking about this line struggling after 5, 7, 10 games, I think then Scott O'Neill is probably going to have to make a more permanent switch.
Let me ask you this, Dave. I mean, we've seen the Lowry line, especially in that Edmonton game, we saw them sort of be the driver and the catalyst. Is that the Jets' tone-setting line? Is that the line that the Jets need to sort of get going, and then all the other lines are sort of going to be pulled along with it? I mean, for so many years, it was sort of the Scheifele. I mean, I know it's been a couple of years now, but the Scheifele Wheeler line was that line for the Jets. Is it now the Lowry line more so than the Scheifele Connor Velarde line?
Well, I think the word you used to start the question, Drew, is the one that's key: tone setter. And I really do believe that that's what that line is. I mean, look, Adam Lowry was out there to take the face-off to start overtime against Chicago, right? So you've got, it begins and ends with the captain. And, whether, I think we need to divest ourselves of line numbering because, really it seems immaterial at this point because we know how much that line is used versus that other line. We'll call it the Nemesnikov line. We'll just base lines based on centers. I remember former Moose, now current Laval coach Pascal Vincent used to always chastise me when I'd say about, well, this line. He goes, well, Dave, we don't have lines. We just have, this. And like,
Dave, I can come up with nicknames for each line if you want.
Yeah, well, that's your thing right now, Ed. So that's fine with me. Although there might be a little chatter with that, but we'll understand. But no, I think I definitely think there's something to be said, Drew, about that line being the line that is the driver for this team. And again, it allows the Scheifele line, especially at home, where you can have your pick of matchups. It really does allow, Scott Arniel and the coaching staff to set the tone early in a hockey game and allow them to get the favorable matchups they want, because he isn't afraid to match Adam Lowry's line against any line in the NHL. And so because of that, as I've said, and I think I don't want to get into the cliches just, ahead of game 3 here, but the truth is, Ezzy, I think that this team is going to be this line for this team will set the tone throughout the course of many hockey games. And yeah, I do think it's important. I agree with the point Ezzy was just making. You do want to see more from that, the Nemestikov line. There's no question about it. It is early. It's only game 2. So I don't sit there going, well, you can't. I mean, these guys showed last year that they were able to work well together, and their numbers reflected that. So I think it's just, you don't hit the panic button, and you certainly don't need to hit a panic button after just 2 games.
Well, never mind a panic button, because I think that would be agreed a little bit extreme. But at what point in time, Ezzy, do you maybe try and change things up to get, Nemesnikov, Perfetti, and Ehlers going? Because none of those 3, either as a unit or individually, have been overwhelmingly fantastic through the first 2 games. And this was a topic during training camp, is that we sort of knew what the top 6 was going to be like when playing together, but we didn't know what the ceiling would be if they maybe put those top 6 in more of a blender to try and figure things out.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, Ehlers had an assist on Scheifele's tying goal, but for the most part, he didn't have a very strong game. I mean, he turned the puck over several times. We talked about that on the post-game show. We're not going to get, too into the nitty-gritty details of the game 2 nights ago, but Ehlers didn't have his best night.
It wasn't. I didn't want to talk about it when the game happened. It was that lousy of a game.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. Look, it wasn't a Picasso, as Claude Noel used to say, but it wasn't bad. Like I've been impressed. Again, I'm not going to get into it again, but I've been impressed by this Blackhawks team. Like, they actually play like a team. There's actually some structure to them. Like last year, it was like, it was chaos when the Jets were playing the Blackhawks. But to Dave's point about the Lowry line, I mean, that line's going to go up against the top line of the Wild today. And that top line is Marco Rossi, Kirill Kaprizov, and Matt Zuccarello. By the way,
that line has been on fire so far this year.
So is Matt Boldy. Matt Boldy's got 5 points in 2 games.
But we'll talk more about the Wild throughout the course of the show. But before, Ezzy, it is worth noting, Joel Eriksson Ek did not make the trip from St. Paul to Winnipeg, got injured last night in the Wild Kraken game. So
took a bad elbow.
The Wild, he took an elbow, from Adam Larson, took an elbow to the jaw. And it's certainly worth noting that the Wild will be without one of their key centermen in tonight's game on the second half of back-to-back against the Winnipeg Jets. I see Kenny Wiebe is backstage. Let's bring Kenny in for the conversation. Ken, good morning. Nice to see you on this Sunday. Thank you for joining us on a special edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Yeah, good morning, gentlemen. Doing great. Always great to be with you, but woke up to some tough news here. Brian Rogers, the longtime play-by-play voice from The Rock, mentioning that Brendan McCarthy, the professor, passed away last night after a long battle with leukemia. One of the great AHL writers, as Dave knows here. So tough news there, but just a reminder, make every moment count, folks. Thinking of him and his family, though, down in the Rock this morning here.
Absolutely, and we extend our condolences as well. Always some sad news, and everybody going through, the various battles that they have, and we wish them all the best in that. No seamless way to transition from that, Kenny. But thank you for
my
sharing
apologies
that
on the segue there.
No,
sorry,
that's okay. That's okay. Thank you for bringing. Thank you for informing the audience, of course, about that unfortunate news. We were talking about the Jets so far through the first 2 games, and really, how do they get the Ehlers, Nemesnikov, Perfetti line sort of going? That's the line that's sort of been garnering all the eyeballs, because that's the line that really hasn't been up to snuff so far. Is it something where you just sort of continue to give him time to make things work out, or could you see Scott Arniel maybe going to the top 6 blender a little bit earlier this year?
Yeah, fair question. And yeah, I mean, for sure, people are fired up about numerous things, even with a 2-0 start for the Jets, guys. But I mean, the facts are that 3 of the 4 lines are kind of cooking, right? So, and the one line is not really generating as much as we're used to seeing. So I would say a little too early for major concern, but it would be one of those caution flags, right? I mean, I think that's how I described it the other day. Not a full on red flag where you're saying this can never work. And I we love the talk about recency bias and sample size when it's convenient, but let's not forget it's 2 games into a young season, and this is not to blame Cole Perfetti, because I'm not saying that he is the guy that's struggling, because he's not necessarily, but Cole missing camp, this is part of it, guys. I mean, Dave, you were there, like almost from the beginning. Scheifele, Connor, and Velarde have been together, and it allows you to, when you have those additional reps, it allows you to get that chemistry back a little bit sooner. So I would say that was one of the concerns I'm sure the Jets brass had going into the season. And I know that you, not to relitigate this, I'm sure you guys have already talked about it last week, but I mean, it's also part of the reason Brad Lambert didn't get a full pull with Nikolai Ehlers and Cole Perfetti as well. So I would say it's not quite much ado about nothing, guys, but it is something that we'll continue to watch. But again, I know there's lots of things going on social. Oh, well, Ehlers and Perfetti has never worked. Like, come on.
It's 2 games.
When Perfetti,
and that's not true.
And guys, yes, I mean, I know that Gabe Velarde was out early last year, but I mean, Perfetti and Ehlers got plenty going when Cole Perfetti was almost a point a game player last year, guys. I seem to recall him spending the majority of that time with Nikolai Ehlers and Vladislav Namestnikov after he moved to center. Because yes, although Ehlers got cooking when Kyle Connor was out on that top line, it was Alex Iafallo who got the promotion at the beginning of the year. It was not Nikolai Ehlers. So I don't want to hear any of the nonsense that those guys have no chemistry and it cannot work. Now, can it be improved? Of course. And I also quite like the fact that Nikolai Ehlers got a little spicy in the post game when it was suggested to him that it was on, that they were on the struggle bus essentially. Again, I'm using a little bit more entertaining phrasing, but I'm okay with that. I mean, but it also, I think that Nikolai is also the first to say that line needs to get going a little bit better. Scott O'Neill sees it, fans see it, people who follow the team see it. But I mean, we've seen this in the past, and often the coaches had to, in previous iterations, sometimes the Jets have broken up successful lines to try and get one line going. But I would say in this case, given how the other 3 lines are playing, you definitely require more leash before you think about breaking things up. And hey, I'm not disputing the fact that Kyle Connor has had a nice small sample size history with Cole Perfetti, and I quite think that it may work. So, and it may be tried again. And I know the other thing that people get kind of tied up in, guys, is that they think because a line is together at the start, it has to be together forever. That's not the way it is. The NHL is way more about pairs now than about trios, maybe except for the Lowry line. But I expect them to get going. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I do as well, Kenny. And now that the buffet is, officially open,
ring the bell. There's got to be like the stock market.
It
should ring the bell there. I believe.
We should have the stock market bell for when Kenny's buffet officially opens. There's obviously a lot to talk about, a lot to like from the game against Chicago. Mark Scheifele's 2 goals, Connor Hellebuck's performance. You wrote about Neil Pionk in the Winnipeg Free Press, that huge play to prevent an empty net goal. I wanted to actually maybe go pivot a little bit and ask about Capo Kakinen being claimed by waivers, because I wanted to ask you and pick your brain. I actually was going to text you, but you've told me not to text you in the past, so no, I'm obviously kidding. But I mean, like a guy that I'm not sure if I threw this guy out on X. Like, I was just thinking, like, do you expect the Jets to go after a veteran goalie? Like, I threw out Martin Jones, who was actually pretty good on the Leafs last year. I know some people were calling for Michael Hutchinson. Obviously, if with Eric Comrie back, it's time to bring, like, maybe Al Montoya is going to come back as well, Kenny. But I mean, what are your thoughts? Because obviously the Moose won their first game yesterday. Thomas Milic is is clearly like a goaltender of the future for the Jets. They have high hopes for him. But what did you kind of take from the Kaapo Kähkönen being claimed, and do you see the Jets organization bringing in a veteran for the Moose?
Yeah, it's a good question, Ezzy, and I'll do my best to see if I can get your number removed from the blocked list here. So you can send those during the week or anytime. Yeah, I
Be
mean,
careful what you say, Ken. Be careful what you say, my friend.
I trust him. It's okay, fellas. Let's put it this way. I mean, it's an interesting development for sure. Mildly surprising because I think that, yes, Eric Comrie was the first goalie signed of the two on July 1st, but I think that as the day went on July 1st, the Jets saw recognition that Kähkönen was a guy that they wanted to invest a little bit of time in, thinking that if you got him in the goalie lab with Wade Flaherty and Drew McIntyre, that you could maybe round out a few parts of Kähkönen's game. Because, I mean, you guys have had Kevin Woodley on before, the goalie expert. When we had him on July 1st on Kenny and Rennie, he talked about how he's such an athletic goalie, and he's not as technically sound maybe as a Connor Hellebuck, obviously, but he's the kind of guy that he saw potential. And when he's played in front of teams that are poor, his numbers have reflected that. But when he's had some success in the NHL, it's been with good defensive teams. And they sort of thought it could be similar to Laurent Brossoit, where, when Laurent Brossoit was signed the first time, guys, I mean, we didn't know a whole lot about him other than he was, a highly touted draft pick, had a pretty good junior career, but hadn't really established himself yet. So, and I would even say
bad numbers when he was on Edmonton. When he was on the bad Edmonton teams, he had bad numbers.
Exactly. So I see some similarities there. So do I think the Jets would have loved to see him get through waivers and maybe given him a chance to compete further for the backup job as they went along? Absolutely, yes. Were they surprised he was claimed by Colorado? Probably not. And for people who missed it, 2 for 2 in the pull department for Alexander Georgiev, which is a tough start, and it didn't go much better or any better, quite frankly, for Justus Annunen after that last night. So your original question, do I think there's a possibility of a veteran being signed? I do. I don't know that it's immediate, as because, depending on, we've seen so many goalies on waivers already this year. I don't know that the Jets expected the Avalanche to have 2 for 2 in pulls, and there's a legit possibility that Kähkönen could be starting the next game, quite frankly, for the Colorado Avalanche. So I see a lot of potential for Kähkönen. So, but at the same time, I think stick taps to Eric Comrie for winning the job. Good job by him. We know what he's brought to done with the Moose. We know what he's done with the Jets in his last tour of duty here after his waiver wire spin cycle. So, I mean, first of all, good job by him. And I think the reason why Hutchinson's brought up is because he's in the community, right? Lives here, went to the Devils camp on a PTO. So it's definitely, if they just need a PTO situation where it's not a guy that they necessarily are going to keep for the year. And again, I'm not saying that they wouldn't do that if they signed Michael Hutchinson. I would just put it this way. I think there's enough belief in Dom DiVincentis that even though their long-range plan was probably to go on the Thomas Milic plan and have him start with the Norfolk Admirals, I don't think they would have an issue letting him get his feet wet and taking a couple of spins in the crease at the American Hockey League level at the start of the year. I'm going to just put it this way. Thomas Milic doesn't need 60 starts this year. He's not going to get 60 starts. But I mean, for Dom, he's a kind of guy that they believe in his long range ability. So, I mean, would they prefer to have a veteran there? Maybe a mentor? I think so. But I don't think it's something that they're necessarily going to be signing someone that they think will be with the Moose for the entire season and DiVincentis goes down. But Martin Jones is a good name, Ezzy. I just think that because there's still a possibility that maybe Kähkönen goes back on waivers and the Jets can reclaim him and maybe send him down to the Moose, I think it would be more of a, they sign somebody, that a veteran guy that's in the ECHL right now on a PTO rather than sign Michael Hutchins to a full 1-year deal. And I mean, Michael Hutchinson could easily do the job of a mentor. And I think, quite frankly, I mean, I ran into him this summer, guys, that he'd be excited about the opportunity. And he was excited about it the year previous in free agency. And he actually thought there was a chance for this year as well. But when the Jets signed Kakinen, I'm pretty sure that Michael told me they have the same agent, so they knew that he knew that he was able to cross off one of those boxes when a little bit before the signing was announced. So I do think it's something they look at, Ezzy, but not necessarily in the immediate future and for the longer range on that front.
Well, Kenny, sticking with a guy who's currently in New Jersey, Brendan Dillon is there, which left open a spot for Dylan Samberg. And Dylan Samberg was one of our biggest question marks. This is a guy who's averaged about 15 minutes of ice time for his first 3 seasons in the NHL. And now is his big opportunity. I mean, it's very early, 2 games in, 22 minutes though for Dylan Samberg, about his average per night. What are you seeing from this young man? This is an opportunity. We've talked about him for years in that second D pairing role on the left side. But what have you seen from him through the first couple of games?
Yeah, and it's so interesting, guys. We sort of sometimes forget. I mean, last year in the opener against Calgary, that was the pairing they started with. They had Brendan Dillon with Nate Schmidt. So, I mean, you can debate who was the second and who was the third pairing, in that situation. But the facts are that the Jets have envisioned this role for Dylan Samberg for a long time. It's just something where it took them some time to grow into it. And, you guys know this. I mean, I think that the progression kind of got interrupted by the freak injury with Johnny Kovacevic that first day of training camp. What was it, like 3 years ago now? So Dylan Samberg is a guy who's viewed very, positively around the NHL. There were plenty of teams interested before the Jets got him in the second round the year he was drafted. He's always had, with his size, he's always had a nice mobility to him. The puck skills are something that, at every level, at the, in the high school level, when he was in Hermantown, when he went to college, even with the Moose, Dave, this, there was some offense there. And how many times did we hear Rick Bowness say, I want this guy to get his shot off more, right? I mean, that was something that, again, I'm not saying Dylan Samberg's going to be a 10-goal guy, but he has more of an offensive, ability to his game. He showed it right in the opener, going bar down on that rush, joining the rush after that great play by the Lowry line when they got their, involved in their third goal of the contest. And the other element too, I mean, Dylan Samberg's not going to be Brendan Dillon, guys, and the Jets will miss Brendan Dillon. He is a presence on the back end with the way he plays physically. He's a presence in the room, given his leadership ability as a culture carrier. And he also happened to have 8 goals, which was a career high. So they will miss all of those elements. But at the same time, I think that one of the reasons the Jets maybe missed out in free agency and, the offer didn't come in early enough for them to keep a guy who wanted to be around here was the belief in Dylan Samberg. So if the Jets sign Brendan Dillon to a 3-year deal, that means for the majority of that time, at least the first 2 years, if not 3 out of the 4. I'm sorry, he only got a 3-year deal. Sorry about that. Dylan Samberg, that means he is staying on the third pairing, basically. Right. So if you want a guy to do more and give more, sometimes you have to create opportunity, even though it leaves a bit of a hole would be maybe too strong, but for lack of a better term right now, since it's in wake up territory, let's go with that on the back end. But the Jets have believed in this player for a long time. Anyone who has had Dylan Samberg on their roster, whether it's World Junior or college or high school or Moose or Jets, have believed in him. And I think Samberg believes in himself, guys. He seems, I mean, again, you see it has nothing to do with the fact that he played in the Manitoba Open, but you just see a comfort level with him around the rink this year. Mm-hmm. Not that he didn't have it before, but he feels a little bit more comfortable. And I saw something similar in terms of the maturity with Brad Lambert throughout the entire training camp here too. But Samberg can handle the job. Will there be some nights where it's tough? Yes. Guess what? When you play against top 6 forwards, there will be nights when it's tough. No matter how good you are, no matter who you are, no matter how long you've been around the NHL, there will be some nights when the expected goals number and the Corsi numbers will be low. They were low the other night, but I didn't think that Dylan Samberg and Pionk struggled in that game either. So anyways, and score effects, so you guys know score effects played a large role in that game 1 against Edmonton for some players also. I mean, is there going to be room for improvement for that pairing? Yes, but I would say that that was one of the, not only that was a question mark. Could that second pairing handle those minutes? That was another question mark. And could those players take their game to the next level? I think we've seen both Neil Pionk and Dylan Samberg get off to a very strong start. Small sample size. I understand that completely. I see decisive decision making being made by both players. We know that Neil Pionk didn't want to take any credit whatsoever yesterday for the hip check on Bedard, saying that, he's got burned by that before. But I'm here to tell you, fellas, when one of the best young players in the National Hockey League leaves himself open and you catch him,
you don't apologize for it.
You don't. And quite frankly, how much did you notice Bedard offensively after the hit took place? He had a couple of nice chances that sailed wide, but this wasn't I own the puck and I own the ice situation. And part of that is exactly what Scott Arniel was talking about yesterday, guys. You have to make those skilled players uncomfortable, because if they're feeling it, they're going to make somebody look bad on the ice. So I think that it's important that these, aggressive, assertive plays are being made by both Samberg and Pionk. And it's part of the reason the Jets are off to a strong start here.
Sunday morning, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Ken Wiebe of the Winnipeg Free Press is our guest on the program. Kenny, we were talking about this earlier. For so many years when the Jets first came back to Winnipeg, you could say maybe Andrew Ladd was the tone setter for the Jets. And then it became sort of Blake Wheeler as the tone setter. In your mind right now, is Adam Lowry sort of that tone setter at the start of a game, that as Lowry starts, so does the rest of the team sort of snap into it, especially, in the early moments of a game?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, he definitely is a guy that gets things going for the Jets. When they need a big hit, he's there for them. They definitely, that line, I love their ability to generate and create offense so far as well. Mason Appleton off to a great start, really skating well. You guys remember, I mean, last year when we were talking about the second line struggles, some people have forgotten how many glorious scoring chances Nino Niederreiter had, including, I think, 2 posts in the opener on basically open nets. Yeah. So that also impacted the second line being broken up and Cole Perfetti moving out of center to the wing. So Nino, to me, looks extremely confident. The timing last year of that skate cut was, I would say, really unfortunate for him. And again, not because he missed out on 20 goals, because this guy's a perennial 20-goal guy, but I think it really disrupted his rhythm. 21 games without a goal last year to end the season, guys. I mean, that we talked so much about Cole Perfetti going, 2 assists and no goals in 23 games. When Nino Niederreiter, who is, I would even say, even though he plays on the quote unquote checking line, even though they get second line ice time, he's still being counted on as a primary contributor offensively, not a secondary scorer. So when a team has a primary scorer go cold at that time of year, it's impactful. So to me, Nino's had a great jump in his step throughout the entire training camp. Appleton's been flying. It's the cohesiveness of that line, Drew, is my long-winded way of saying I think it's more of a cumulative effort rather than just singling out Adam on that line. But, again, Adam is the tone setter because of leading by example, his physical play, willingness to drop the gloves. And then, two, the beauty of that line, and all three of you know it, it's not just that they know where to be when it comes to checking those highly skilled players like Connor Bedard, like Connor McDavid. They spend the bulk of their time in the offensive zone making those skilled players check. Yeah. And guess what? 90 to 98% of those skilled players don't particularly care for the checking part of the game because they love the fun zone. They like being in the other end. So I think that's what that line has really done, Drew. And even on the nights where the puck management is poor, hey, like the other night, the Jets had a great, I would say, 7 minutes to start the game. Great might be a little bit strong, but they were not giving up anything. And they, again, were spending the majority of their time in the offensive zone until that power play. That's sort of when things turned right around. And so odd because the power play was so crisp in Edmonton, scoring twice. A flat power play kind of really took the wind out of the Jets' sails for, I would say, almost an entire period. They went a long time without even getting a shot on net. But again, to your point, Drew, that the checking line plus, I'm going to call them, they got things kind of spun around for the Jets again, it felt like. And yeah, and that tone setting has been really important for the Jets. But I would also say too, and you guys have seen it, the fourth line of the Jets has actually really done a fantastic job of causing a lot of disruption. Kupari flying around. I know people had their debate about whether to be in the lineup, but he looks like an NHL player again this year, but given his speed, and he's actually making some creative plays, guys.
Were you surprised it was Kupari over Gustafsson, given that Gustafsson probably played his best hockey at the NHL level towards the end of last year?
Yeah, surprise is a tough word, because I mean, you guys know that I'm, Dave and I, drivers of the Gus bus here, and it wasn't necessarily that Gustafsson. I thought Gustafsson had a really strong camp, quite frankly, and moving well, much like last year. Added a little bit of speed to his step, but what I tell people whenever I get asked, and I've been asked plenty about Kupari in the first month of the season since training camp opened. Remember what we were saying about Kupari last year, A, at the time of the trade, B, at the time he showed up for training camp. This is a guy that's been on the Jets' radar since 2017 or 18, when he was 2018, since he was a first-round draft pick. So should we be surprised the organization wants to see a longer runway than 28 games, many of which happened after the separated shoulder against the Devils, where he was largely ineffective? And again, I'm going to point to Dave on this. The Jets wanted to leave Kupari with the Moose for at least another week, but an injury forced them to recall him when he probably wasn't ready for NHL competition last year when he was on the conditioning stint. So for me, the value of Rasmus Kupari getting additional puck touches with the Moose last year would have been massive at that time, because he never really got his timing back. So again, I'm not here to say it's his job for the year, because I think Gustafsson will be in that job for part of it. But right now, if you're a coach, you don't want to take Kupari out, because he's making plays that you expected him to make given the skill set and the raw materials. So he's playing with a little bit more confidence. And, Sean and I have been going back and forth in this a lot this year. And, he didn't really agree with my assessment that he was a guy that generates a lot of chances. And he did generate a lot of chances last year. He just didn't convert any of them. And we know he went 69 games or 70 games between goals. So that's a long time. So I get it. I just wonder, we haven't seen what Rasmus Kupari looks like when he is playing with confidence. So now he has a level of confidence that he hasn't had probably since his LA days. And I would even argue then, guys, that Rasmus playing on a checking line for Todd McClellan, I don't think he exuded a ton of offensive confidence in that 1-2-1-3-1 system either, because it didn't allow him to generate a whole lot. But if you look at his speed, the thing with Rasmus too, guys, if the brain can keep up with the feet, this is an incredibly dangerous player. And I don't say that flippantly. It's a compliment to how incredibly fast he is. It's hard to do that with the puck in your stick at full speed when you go that fast. So I think I've seen him make a lot, again, back to decisive decision making, like we talked about with Dylan Samberg. I've seen Rasmus Kupari make some decisive decisions. And let's go back to preseason, guys. That play where he goes wide and finds Neil Pionk with the backhand pass and Pionk buries it on the backhand, that's a play at speed that we didn't see Rasmus Kupari make enough last year, especially after the injury. So again, Scott O'Neill said on day one of camp, he would like to use more of a rotation. And I know some people, again, on social media are saying, oh, well, he said there was going to be a rotation. How come the lineup's the same for game 3? Well, David Gustafsson was going to be in that rotation, but two of the defensemen the Jets expected to have in that rotation are on IR. So I don't think we need to be saying Scott O'Neill is not telling the truth at this point of the proceedings here. I expect that as the game schedule, and also too, it's spread out at the beginning, guys, which is part of the reason why yesterday's storyline was, when are we going to see Eric Comrie? Right. Because quite frankly, if you wanted to, you could roll with Hellebuyck. I don't think they will. I think Comrie will get a game for sure before the month is over, maybe even 2. But because of the spread out nature of the schedule and because of how well the Jets started the season, and again, I don't think this is Scott O'Neill is scared to change a winning lineup. I don't think it's that at all. I think he just wants to reward the players that have been playing well so far.
Yeah, I think it ultimately comes down to, Kenny, like you say, why would you take there's absolutely no reason to change any of the lineup right now based on the first 2 games. And you obviously don't like to see Gus Bus, in the press box. But Rasmus
and rolling on the fourth D pairing in practice because it helps the numbers.
Sure, yeah, right. But like it's the decision to start Kupari as the fourth line center has worked. It's looked good. That was the right decision. It's undeniable that he's played well if you've been watching the games, right? And look at the numbers, right? I wanted to ask you about the Minnesota Wild, who the Jets play. I'm not sure if I can say this afternoon or tonight. I think 5:00 is still the afternoon.
It's this evening. 5:00 is the evening. It's not the night. It's not the afternoon. It's the evening.
For me, 5:30 is when it becomes evening. But I digress here. We'll call it an evening game against the Wild.
Late afternoon, early evening. Let's
there we
make
go. We'll call it late
Sunday.
yeah.
Let's try to make everybody happy here. Let's use the
exactly.
Let's keep everybody happy here. Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you what your expectations are of this Wild team, because obviously, they weren't a playoff team last year. There was a lot of positives about the Wild. Matt Boldy, he's got 5 points in his first 2 games. He had a breakout year last year. Obviously taken, was that the 2019 draft? Was that the Heinola year? I think it was 2019 Boldy was drafted. And obviously Brock Faber, who was a runner-up for the Calder Trophy. So, I mean, there was a lot of good things, but overall, it wasn't a great year for the Wild. And we know that the penalty kill was one of the worst in the league. I think it was 30th. So I'm not sure, how the penalty kills looked. They lost last night to the Kraken, but we should also mention, as Drew mentioned, that Joel Eriksson Ek's not going to play. So I think that means Ryan Hartman's going to be centering the second line. Obviously, a Jets fan favorite.
Old friend Ryan Hartman.
There's going to be a tribute for Ryan Hartman, I think, later this afternoon, early evening for Hartman. Obviously, he's going to be booed. I'm joking. But what are your expectations for this Wild team? Because I still see them as kind of, battling for maybe 5th or 6th in the division.
Yeah, well, one person who's happy that Brandon Dillon's not here is probably Ryan Hartman, quite frankly, guys. So, but I expect Hartman to be in the middle of plenty today, I'm guessing, given the history with Cole Perfetti and others. My expectations are that the Wild are 1 year away from getting out of cap hell, Ezzy. And that means that it's probably, they're battling with the Utah Hockey Club for 5th, I think, in the division. I think I had them 6th. For me, the X factor, and again, I'm going to point over to Dave's AHL knowledge here. Jesper Wallstad for me is the ultimate wild card when it comes to the Minnesota Wild. Pun not intended. I know it was only a preseason game, but boy, did he ever look good in the game here in Winnipeg. I think this is one of the best goalies outside of the NHL. Now, Ezzy, to your point about the lineup today with Joel Eriksson Ek being out, and Eriksson Ek is a guy that I've had on my Selke ballot. This is an excellent two-way player. Yep. He's given the Jets fits on a number of different levels. He's excellent. He's sort of taken over from Mikko Koivu as the guy who shreds the Jets when it comes to face-offs. And he's such a big body. And man, this is a guy that can score also, along with being such a astute two-way player and defensive acumen that he possesses. So massive loss for them. But at the same time, as you mentioned, not just Boldy, but Kirill Kaprizov absolutely on fire to start the year. Almost had 100 points last year. Again, the Jets somewhat fortunate, I think, that he missed one of the games, I think, due to injury, and in the game, and also got injured in 2 of the games. So when he's on the ice, you have to be aware of him. He's a dynamic player, really fun to watch. But their team just doesn't, it lacks depth. It lacks the depth that the Jets have and many of the teams in the Central Division have. So you have to be led by the high end guys you mentioned. Getting Jared Spurgeon back is massive for them. Missing him on the back end was a huge blow. He's such a great leader, just a great testament to how he's carved out such a great NHL career for himself. Now, yes, him being out opened the door for Brock Faber to almost usurp Connor Bedard for the Calder Trophy. But for me, this team just doesn't have quite enough depth. Their high-end guys will keep them in the mix for a playoff spot. And if they get the goaltending, I mean, last year, Gustafsson really struggled for them after an all-star season the year prior. But Wallstad, for me, is not far away from being a guy that you better be paying attention for. Like, I think this guy's going to be an elite NHL goaltender. I don't know that it'll be this year, but I think he can keep them in the race. But the problem, with Eriksson Ek being out and given their cap situation, colleague Mike Russo, former athletic partner, I think they're going to have to send Wallstead. I don't think Wallstead will be an option. They're going to have to recall a forward from Iowa, and because of their cap situation, I think Wallstedt makes too much money. They're going to have to send him back so they can get a forward in here for the game. I think that was what he was mentioning. Again, I haven't seen anything on the transaction wire, but so that's my long-winded way of saying we might be seeing Gustafsson instead of Wallstedt this late afternoon, early evening match between.
So I guess
two
it was a
teams.
good decision to have 3 goalies on the roster, right?
Well, up and down for sure.
Yeah.
The other thing, guys, Marcus Foligno had a bit of a tough year for the Wild last year, but he's always a guy that is involved physically. Jacob Middleton. I'll be curious today. I mean, we know that we talked a lot about the Jets. Come at the mentality from Rick that I think is still firmly in play. Come at one of us, come at all of us. Marcus Foligno and Jacob Middleton, both willing combatants, and Adam Lowry has gone with both of those guys over the years. And again, I'm not here to say there's going to be a ton of fights this afternoon, but when a team goes 0-4, when your biggest rival goes 0-4 against you the year before, and didn't really like how some of the games went, there's the potential for some fireworks this afternoon. Now, I think the Jets are going to be disciplined and not go looking for these things, but they're also not going to back down either, which should make for as Neil Pionk said to me yesterday when I asked him about it, it's funny. You almost get like a playoff type atmosphere in October, which you don't see quite often, quite frankly, because some teams are kind of sleepwalking and trying to find their structure. So I always look forward to these games. I know you guys do too. And I think it'll be fun to see what kind of team they end up being, because they played better under John Hines, I would say, down the stretch. So, but they don't have as much weaponry maybe as in years past. But again, if the Foligno line gets rolling, that was an identity line for them. Eriksson isn't there. Hartman will have to play up, but Matt Boldy's the kind of guy that some people think could be a 40-goal guy, and Kaprizov could score 50 if he plays 82 games. So you better pay attention to them. They're not a free space on the bingo card, even though they're not necessarily a perennial playoff contender like they used to be, is how I would describe it. Though, again, could they finish ahead of Utah? Of course. Utah was the 6th worst team in the NHL last year.
Utah looks like a juggernaut so far, though, Kenny.
They're improved, and I have them in the playoffs as the last wild card team. I'm going to say that right now, but they're not a lock to be in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of, back and forth, whether it's the LA Kings, whether it's the Minnesota Wild. I mean, the St. Louis Blues probably think they're in that mix too, and they may be. And
the Kraken, right? I'd throw the Kraken in there.
Kraken, too. I think I picked the Kraken to finish just behind Utah, but also too, look at the way Chicago played for the majority of the game against Winnipeg, and look at the way they handled the Oilers last night. I mean, I watched a good chunk of that, the second half of that game. And again, I'm not here saying that Blackhawks are making the playoffs. I don't think that's
but they're pretty good this year, Kenny. They're not bad.
They're structured. They're
a
structured
professional hockey team.
They're structured, and as Luke Richardson kind of almost laughed when he was asked about him, he said they're not close to the youngest team, and they're almost one of the oldest teams behind the Oilers there. So I do think that they'll be a tougher out, and they were already a tough out for the Jets last year. And some teams just match up well against other teams. But there's lots of jockeying for a position in the West. There's not a lot of doormats, is the way I'm going to put it. Even though one of the teams that is expected to be now near the bottom of the standings will visit the Jets on Friday, and unfortunately, it doesn't sound like Macklin Celebrini, the number 1 overall pick, will be here. I know we were debating at the rink yesterday, retroactive IR to Thursday, meaning he could technically be activated, but when Elliott said week to week on the intermission, that I'm not. Let's just put it this way: if we see Macklin Celebrini on the ice, I'll be surprised. I don't think I'll be interviewing Macklin Celebrini this week. Let's put it that way.
That's also 2 injuries for him already, because I believe he was banged up in the preseason as well.
And it might be related, right? I'm not sure. Yeah,
but Kenny, you will be interviewing Tyler Toffoli, though.
I expect to be talking to Tyler Toffoli. Yes, that's true. There's a. If you're looking at the Play Now lines, guys, there's a good chance Tyler Toffoli will be the top of the Dump and Chase NHL column next week. Yes.
There you go.
Okay. Shameless plug. Yes, shameless plug. And for those of you, last one. For those of you who didn't see it, I know that Dave, you promoted, and thank you for doing so on the morning papers. Had a great chat with Scott Arniel one-on-one before the season opened, where he got into, some of his influences in the game and kind of reaching this position. And, again, he's had I think he's had a strong week in his first week full-time on the job, and happy to share that story. And, Scott's a guy that I've known for almost 25 years. He was the assistant coach with the Moose when I had my first job at the Winnipeg Sun and covering that beat. And I know there's been lots of debate in your chat rooms, guys, about whether he was deserving of the job. Again, I don't want to be taking any victory laps after 2 games, but Scott has shown why he's been around the NHL for a long time and has shown that he's up to the task. Now he has to do that over the course of 82 and into the playoffs, but this is a guy who's got an astute hockey mind and knows what he's doing. And I'm guessing that it's going to take longer for the critics to be quieted, but again, I appreciate it.
It's usually the case in all aspects of life.
Well, it doesn't prevent them from shouting from the rooftops saying they're 100% right, even though they may not have the context. But again, it's early, but this is a guy that I've said this to people before. I think I've said it to you guys. You don't stick around the NHL in associate coaching jobs if you are not capable of handling those jobs. It's not just, this guy's my friend, I want him on my coaching staff. This guy's been on a lot of successful staffs, and he's worked incredibly hard for the second opportunity, and I expect him to make the most of it.
Well, there goes my question, Kenny, because I was actually going to reference your article, but that's okay because I had a backup question in case you went there. But I will say it is funny, though, to see the relationship Scott Arniel has developed from his previous days, and just watching, when he saw Judio and in the
Sure.
in the media scrum during preseason, or Joe Pascucci was in town doing some stuff yesterday. Got very excited.
I thought that might have been Joe that Scotty Arniel was referencing.
And Bender, Jimmy Bender and Joseph. Yeah.
So he was very excited to see Joe back in town the other day for that game against Chicago. But you know what? I'll move on to milestone week, because it has been a milestone week for Mark Scheifele. Of course, getting to 300 goals. He's going to hit another milestone tonight, playing in an 800th NHL game, which is shocking to think that it's already been 800 games for Mark Scheifele. But, he's got 3 goals, 1 assist through 2 games. What are you seeing from him? And, we're a year ago, they're close to the signing of his 7-year extension with the Winnipeg Jets. Really, Mark Scheifele, we know, Kenny, he's all about legacy. And now his legacy and his focus, now that the contract is done, is winning a Stanley Cup. What are you seeing from him early on in the season?
Yeah, he's still just been a really dangerous player, and I would even say too. I mean, Mark's the kind of guy that sometimes he moves around really smartly. He's a fast skater, but he's not always moving at top speed. But he's going to certain areas rather than like exploding to one spot and then waiting there. I've liked his puck distribution. I've liked the way he's handled himself on the power play. And guys, we know this. The power play was a point of emphasis coming into the season. Occasionally Mark would be the power play ran through him, but occasionally it ran through him at the faceoff dot. And this year you're seeing way more motion. You're seeing pucks snapping around. You're seeing Mark getting to spots and really being dangerous on a lot of fronts. I mean, shooting, passing, all of it. He's got the vision. He's got the skill. He's got the shot. So he's been a dangerous weapon for the Jets. And could he score 42 again? It's possible. I think north of 30 is pretty much a lock, but I've seen Mark moving well. His ability to think the game, the subtle plays that he makes. I mean, one of the things for Mark is, we know this. Mark's the kind of guy that wants to play for his country again, fellas. I mean, 4 nations is something that, he's only been asked about it casually in the past, and he'd love to do it and everything else. But we've talked about this previously. If Mark can play for Canada, it's sort of like his Dale Hawerchuk moment, where I think that Mark would, he already knows a lot of these guys. He's established himself as a, point of game player and a really high end guy. If Mark would have the ability to spend a 2.5 week span of time around Nathan McKinnon, Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid, all of these guys, I think it would be incredibly valuable for him when it comes to playoff success. He had incredible playoff success, 14 goals, 20 points in the run to the Western Conference Final, but they haven't really had that as a team or Mark as an individual since that time. There have been effective stretches, but there hasn't been that, signature run since that time. And I think that Mark knows he needs to be defensively sound if he wants to be in that mix, and he has to be a guy that is cooking. I mean, this is a guy that can be an exceptional power play player. he thinks the game to the level that there would be consideration for Mark to even play with a Connor McDavid, given his ability to hang on to pucks and the way he works in the offensive zone. Now, again, I'm not saying Mark Scheifele is the top line winger for Team Canada. I'm just saying that he's the kind of guy, because of his hockey sense, would be considered for, some of those elite jobs, almost similarly to when Jonathan Toews kind of went in as the 13th forward and became the, MVP of the tournament, kind of that idea. So for me, I've liked a lot of what Mark's done. And Dave, I mean, hot tub time machine moments, like, this is crazy to think of 2011. 2011's a long time ago. And it was a fun time, and it was a really neat event. And, seeing that, like, joyful, enthusiastic explosion from Mark Scheifele wearing the blank NHL dark jersey, and like to get the first glimpse of the self-professed hockey nerd, and to think of how far he's come as a player, what he's gone through, all of those things. I mean, Mark's one of these veterans, even though he's still only 31 years old. So you've seen this guy grow up. You've seen him mature. I think there was a stretch of time where, he wasn't loving the game the same way that he used to as an 18-year-old. I see lots more joy right these days. You see him, in a similar vein to how Blake Wheeler mentored him. I loved what I saw at training camp, guys, with Braden Yager, staying on the ice an extra, I think it was longer than half an hour, quite frankly. And then seeing Braden later in the week, and I know that he had that kind of a moment with Sidney Crosby last year. And then to just talk to Braden about how appreciative that he was that a, high-end NHL center and leader is spending this time with him and investing that time with him. I think that he's really evolved as a player and as a person, and he's still a outstanding hockey player. And I think he's still an outstanding hockey player that wants to accomplish more. To your point about legacy, Dave, this isn't just about potentially having a statue beside his mentor Dale Hawerchuk. This is about trying to bring a championship to a community that matters to him. And I've referenced this before with you guys, and I want to reference it again just because we're talking about the historical films element and the 800 games, and a guy that's probably going to play 1,000 with Winnipeg. That week where they did the unveiling of the statue, guys, Mark Scheifele, his ability to listen to Dale's former teammates. He heard plenty of stories from Dale about what Winnipeg meant to him, and I think that those were always going to be lasting. But to see how Dale was revered in this community by people that played with him in the 80s and 90s, I honestly think it opened up an entirely new door for him to staying here and wanting to cement his own legacy. Because prior to that point, again, and he had never said this publicly, so maybe we misinterpreted it, but I think that Mark was looking for definitely greener pastures, whether they were here or elsewhere. But I think there was a part of him that was curious about what it would be like elsewhere. And again, I have no proof of this, but I would imagine that in one of the last conversations Dale had with Mark, he told him about how if he could do it all over again, he would have spent his entire career in Winnipeg. And I think that would be something that definitely resonated with Mark. And I know it was important to Mark Chipman, because he told this to me last year on the day the contract was signed. They didn't want Mark Scheifele to leave the organization the way that Dale did in the 90s.
Ken Wiebe, always a great appearance here at the buffet. We'd be remiss to let you go. I know you got a hard stop in a minute without sharing this following video. There's a photo that Kenny happened to share with me. I hope I'm not telling stories out of
it's
school
good
at all.
It's good.
Hole-in-one number 4 was what, last week?
Yeah, Minnewasta Golf Club.
Wow. I didn't know about that, Kenny. Number 4, the Quattro.
Yeah, sorry, boys. I wasn't screaming it from the rooftops, but did share it on a few places. And yeah, playing with a couple of hockey buddies from the Altona Maroons days, Keith Bialy and Jeremy Matuszewski. 60K wins, 140-yard downhill, number 4 at Minnewasta and Morden. Course was looking great. Ball landed just short, front pin, draw shape. One bounce onto the green. It looked like it was going to stop, and all of a sudden the ball disappeared. And it was one of those where you're like, "Oh, this is going to be close." And then I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, no problem." And then I don't know if the wind blew it in or what, but the boys looked at me and they're like, "Oh my God, it's in!" Like it was crazy for sure. So, anyways, thank you. 6-year drought is over, and happy to get number 4 on the board.
Kenny,
always
you've got
a
four-
thrill.
You've got 4 holes in one. I'm still looking for my first career birdie at this point.
Well, as you know, I'm not as busy on the home front as you, and I've snuck in a few more rounds in the last couple of years here. So it's also, just lastly, to put a bow on it, guys, so odd. Like 3 different sets of friends brought up the Glendale double aces in the week prior to Saturday, including in the morning at Southwood when I played at someone who's a member at Glendale, Johnny Stroich, and at night as well when we were at a friend's for dinner. And earlier in the week, Brett McGarry and Greg Mackling brought it up as well. So it seemed like someone was trying to will it into existence. And again, there's always an incredible element of luck involved. But, for all the people still looking for their first, honestly, keep firing at flags. It's the only way that the dumb luck can work for you.
I think the better lesson is find a job that allows you to play as much golf as Kenny does. I think that's the key to it all. Everyone needs a Manitoba golf tour summer.
Yeah, that's true. The total rounds were down this year, but it's funny. I mean, I'd said to John Stroich this week, and I was only half kidding, but because of that crazy once in a lifetime day at Glendale, when you don't hit it close on a par 3 now, it feels like a massive disappointment. So, and as the guys would point out in Minnewaska that I played with, I had 2 triples on the subsequent par 3s, and I think a double. So my overall day, not looking great on the par 3 scorecard, but anytime you have a double circles around a number 1, it's a big thrill. And thanks for embarrassing. Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Go out and try to accomplish something on the golf course. I got it, Drew.
There you go, Kenny. Thank you, buddy. We'll let you go. We'll see you later on this evening. Jets in the Wild, and then Kenny and Rennie following the Illegal Curve post-game show. Have a great day, Kenny, and happy Thanksgiving to you and yours.
Yeah, thanks, fellas. Always a treat to be with you, and enjoy this fine season, and I'll look forward to the next appearance. Have a great day here. Cheers.
You too. Take care, Kenny. There he goes. Kenny Wiebe joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Commercial-free hour number 1 means we have to make up for lost time. So we'll go to break, come back with more on the Jets and the Jets in the Wild and everything else to go. Stay with us. Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, a special Sunday edition, rolls on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in 2 unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumor's incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Always great to get together with Kenny Wiebe. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by our friends at Play Now. Learn to bet with Play Now, the official betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets. Sign up and get up to $250 in bonus bets. Conditions apply. 18 plus. Enjoy responsibly. We knew it would be a trip to the buffet, and it was. But one item that we actually didn't get an opportunity to talk about, that I meant to ask Kenny about, but the clock ran out, is about the performance so far of Hayden Fleury and Colin Miller as the Jets' third pairing. Again, small sample size, 2 games. But I would have to say, gentlemen, and I'm happy to hear your opinions on this topic, that both of them have acquitted themselves very well and certainly look comfortable playing in that third pairing unit in, less time than the top 4. But I wouldn't say that they're being overwhelmingly sheltered so far.
No, not at all. And, we talked about it a few weeks back, 2 or 3 weeks back, when both Heinola and Stanley, we knew they were going to be out of the lineup for a month. Like, Hayden Fleury's got, I think, 250, 260 games of NHL experience. And yes, he's bounced around a little bit from the NHL to the AHL. But there's a reason why, he keeps getting picked up by teams, right? The Seattle Kraken, the Tampa Bay Lightning. Like, we thought he was maybe going to start the season with the Moose, but we obviously know with the injuries to Heinola and Stanley, that's the reason why he's starting as the third pairing left side defenseman, right? But look, he can skate. He's obviously got the size, right? I don't know if he's 6'5", 6'6", but Fleury's a big man. He's mobile. And I think, what kind of stands out to me is, like, these guys can take care of their own zone and they can move the puck, right? Like, Colin Miller got a lot of attention in the preseason for how he was looking on the power play. I believe, guys, he hasn't got out there for the second power play unit because they've gone with 4 forwards and Neil Pionk, right?
That's right.
But if they go with 2 defensemen and they go with Pionk and Miller, obviously those are both, right shot guys. But I mean, Miller has that ability with the big shot, and not just the big shot, which is obviously, one of the harder shots in the league. It's that, like, he's got the skill. He's a smart player. There's a reason why the Jets retained him. We weren't sure that they were going to retain him because he didn't play that much last year.
It was a surprise when they did retain him, given
right.
The limited usage in the, after they acquired him from New Jersey.
And as soon as the Jets bought out Nate Schmidt, right, like, you're thinking, okay, so who's playing the right side on the third pair? And that's obviously Miller, right? Mm-hmm. And he has the ability, I think, he might not be the best second pairing right side defenseman, but if they do decide to, flip-flop Miller and Pionk, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm just saying he has that ability to move up in the lineup. He's a veteran. At this point, he's probably got, 500-600 games of NHL experience. He's been in the NHL a long time. So I think Fleury and Miller have been solid, Drew. And I think, if they're playing a simple game and taking care of business in their own end, that's what you want to get. And if they can chip in a little bit of offense, Dave, great. But you're not expecting a ton of offense out of those guys. But I think, especially considering that we thought Heinola was going to be starting the season on that third pair, I think, Fleury's filled in nicely.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about it, Ezzy. And that was the big question mark because of the fact that you were thinking, okay, this is going to be Ville Heinola's time to shine. And, worth noting when we're doing, especially when the Jets were away, I was at Hockey for All Center covering Moose stuff. And, Ville Heinola is continuing to work hard every single day. He's, on the ice in flip-flops, of course. He's moving pretty well, though, I will say, like, just seeing him around when you're in the dressing room and stuff like that. He seems, again, he's not skating, but as far as I know, he could be now. But for what I'm seeing, you're just seeing him work on his shot. He's working on his hands. So you can see the determination from this young man to get back in and get his chance. But again, this focus of the segment right now is on Fleury and Miller. And yes, I do think that this was a big question mark. Would the Jets be able to get something out of them, right? Obviously, like as he said, you didn't know if the Jets were bringing back Colin Miller. They bring him back on a 2-year deal. He gets a chance to kind of have a little bit of permanence in a market and have an impact. And, he doesn't want to just be here. He wants to be an impactful player. And I think, that's one of the things we're watching for from him. And like you said, Drew, if you need to, you can have these guys, temporarily move up, but ultimately they're not going to be asked to do that. right? This is the Josh Morrissey, Dylan DeMello show. This is the Dylan Samberg and Neil Pionk show. So this third pairing really isn't going to be tasked because, as I said to Kenny in my question to him, Dylan Samberg's eating up a lot more minutes than he ever did before, right? And again, I know it's only 2 games, but going from 15 minutes to 22 minutes, like we said, so far it looks good. And then it becomes the function of these guys being able to more than capable of handling kind of that third pairing role and the minutes that they're given in the tasks they're kind of handed by the coaching staff. And the other thing that endears a player, I think, to the organization and his teammates is what Colin Miller did for Connor Hellebuck in trying to preserve that shutout, right? Like you see him laying, and it's a 5-0 game and he's blocking shots and hard shots. We're not talking about like a little like wrister. He's blocking a slap shot from in tight because he wants to help preserve the shutout. And that goes a long way.
Hayden Fleury taking the shot off the visor, getting cut and returning in the same game. I mean,
right. And so I think it just solidifies him as a player that is, or endears him, I should say, to his teammates, because he's showing that dedication to win and dedicating himself to their efforts to, again, like I said, preserve that shutout for Connor Hellebuck. So I think that they've done well. I mean, they're not going to be Nate, the goal scorer Schmidt, who after only getting 2 last year with the Jets, he's already got 1 for the Florida Panthers. He scored last night, I think, in a loss.
That was a terrible nickname. That was awful.
That was awful. I withdrew on that one.
That was awful.
It wasn't a nickname. I'm just saying.
It was just whatever you were trying to do with that didn't work. I'm sorry.
I was literally just saying that he scored a goal.
You should have gone with Sniper, Nate the Sniper Schmidt.
But it wasn't about trying to create a nickname.
Well, but you said
I mean, I'll be honest with you. The only person who comes up with nicknames in this show is the man down below, Ezzy Ginsburg, aka the creator of GST.
Well, no, but that's not true because you guys came up with
the nickname of Compost.
Yeah,
but that's for we're talking about hockey players. We're not talking about Ginsburg here.
I still want to know how Mud Bruneto got his nickname. To me, that is something
I don't think it's actually his nickname. I think that's actually his name.
His parents' name
his brother's name was Dirt.
Mud and Dirt, they're beautiful names. That's something you can research, Ezzy, and report back to the audience here. But going back to that third pair for the Jets, I mean, that was such a topic, all throughout training camp. And then, of course, the injuries happened and it became even more of a topic. But it has to be somewhat comforting for the organization to say, okay, these guys seem to be comfortable with each other. They seem to be okay playing the minutes that they're playing. We don't need to... There's not as much urgency involved in getting either Heinola back or Stanley back, because right now on that left side, Hayden Fleury is certainly doing an admirable job so that they can make sure that when Heinola come back and when Stanley comes back, it's at as full strength as possible at this point, Ezzy.
No, absolutely. And look, the Jets' ultimate success in the regular season and the playoffs isn't going to come down to the third defense pairing, but you need to have a solid 12, 13, 15, 16 minutes out of that third pair, obviously depending on, if there's penalty killing situations or power play situations, right? Because Hayden Fleury can kill penalties, right? He's got the big body and everything like that. He's not the most physical guy, but he has the ability to obviously move forwards out of the net and, box them out into the corners or whatever he needs to do. He's a talented player, and that's what you need. You don't want to have a third pairing that's getting caved in and that can't get the puck out of their own zone. They can't move the puck out, everything like that, right? That's what you need out of the third pair. So you look around the league, and there's teams that don't have as good of a third pairing as the Jets do, right? And so that's what you want to see. And obviously, you're not going to be going up against necessarily the team's top line or second line, but I think that deep pairing, at least through 2 games, has been really solid. And there's no reason to expect, guys, that there's going to be this big regression. Like Fleury is just the way I would just describe,
especially with the schedule the way it is this month.
Well, no, absolutely. I mean, let's be honest. Minnesota's not a great team. San Jose is not a great team. Then you've got Pittsburgh coming up. They're struggling early on this season. Like Rucker McGroarty is getting dumped by Max Domi of the Toronto Maple Leafs, right?
That was.
But there's no reason, guys, because
maybe he's not quite NHL ready there, son. Maybe you needed a little bit of seasoning.
Yeah. Time to go back to the University of Michigan, right? But the reality is, the way I would describe this Fleury Miller pair is they're just a steady veteran pair. I mean, again, they individually, these are just NHL veteran guys on your third pair. And are they going to make mistakes throughout the course of the year? Of course they are. Everybody's going to make mistakes. We make mistakes on this show, believe it or not. But I think Fleury and Miller, have just been exactly as advertised. It's what you expect out of just professional hockey players. So I think it's been, nice to see, because, through 2 games, obviously it hasn't been perfect. And I think, the Nemesnikov line is one line where we're expecting more offense from this line, obviously, hopefully starting today against Minnesota. But that third pair has definitely, I think, performed well through the first 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly been solid for the Winnipeg Jets in what has been by and large a solid start to the season for the Jets, especially when you move up front. I mean, we talked, Lowry, Niederreiter, Appleton, they got a lot of headlines after the game in Edmonton when they were just an absolute force. But if all of a sudden Kupari, Iafallo, and Barron can be a similar force play on the fourth line, and they've been very good so far as well, then that bottom 6 for the Jets, you look at the top 6 for the Jets and you match it up against other teams, other top teams, top 6, and it probably doesn't stack up. The other teams have, I'm going to say, more superstars or higher level superstars than the Jets do in the top 6.
Well, it depends who you're talking about. If you're putting Sure, if you're putting it up against the Sharks top 6 or the Ducks top 6.
No. Stanley Cup contenders is who I'm talking about. Stanley Cup teams with Stanley Cup aspirations. That's what I'm talking about. We saw it last year with Colorado. Their top 6 was better than the Jets' top 6, and it wasn't that close, to be perfectly honest. But if you look at the bottom 6 for the Jets, then maybe, and I know the Lowry line is getting second line minutes or second ice time minutes. So, that is, we're firmly aware of that. Everyone's firmly aware of that. You don't need to harp on it anymore. But that Barron, Kupari, and Iafallo line, if that line can go out there and win their minutes like they've been doing so far, that's, again, another sort of tone-setting catalyst for the Jets, I think, Dave.
Well, I mean, I think Rasmus Kupari is key. And Scott O'Neill's talked about him this week, and we spoke with him, which if you didn't get a chance to see it, you can watch the interview on our YouTube channel. But I do think that because remember, he scored a goal and that was great, but he also drew 2 penalties and the Jets scored on the power play. That's pretty impactful. And that's having a positive impact on the team and on the game. So that's significant. Morgan Barron is a guy we've talked about for a long time. He's a guy you're expecting more. You want to see more out of him. Now, again, everybody wants more because and he talked about it himself, about that desire. He wants more minutes. He would never say, yeah, I'm content playing what I'm playing. I want more. Every guy wants more. So
I want more healthy scratches, please. Scratch me more often.
And of course, Alex Iafallo. I mean, he's got the big contract. The one thing I will say for Winnipeg that maybe we haven't really focused on, but it's kind of an interesting topic. The number of guys who are in the last year of their deal, who are in contract years. And while it's a little bit difficult because it creates uncertainty for next year, Ezzy, there is an added element of the fact that, well, these guys are playing for their next contracts. You know that you're going to get the best out of them night in, night out, because they all want, I'm not saying they weren't professionals and aren't going to give their effort anyways, but now these guys have to play for their next deal. So I think that's an interesting topic. And I think that could be something that's going to be a very good benefit story for the Winnipeg Jets, is these guys who are playing for their next deal and trying to show that either they're worth the money they're getting, Alex Iafallo, or you're entitled to get more money than you were currently paying Mason Appleton.
All due respect to Iafallo, who obviously makes a lot more money than I do every year. I don't know if he's not necessarily going to be making $4 million on his next contract. But yes, I know what you're saying. He wants to get another 2 or 3 year deal for sure after this year. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about obviously Nick Ehlers, Dave. You're talking about Mason Appleton. You're talking about Alex Iafallo, right? Like, and I think tied into that is the fact that you have Brad Lambert and Nikita Chibrikov who are ready to step into the NHL, right? Obviously, Lambert is a natural center. Chibrikov is a winger, and all the players we're talking about are wingers. But if you're thinking Nikita Chibrikov is going to be, in a bottom 6 role next year, I mean, I think what I'm saying is I think Appleton, Iafallo are aware of that. It's not like they don't see, Chibrikov and Lambert knocking at the door. And I think you guys would agree. These guys, I mean, Chibrikov and Lambert most likely, based on if there's injuries, will probably play for the Jets this year. But we're talking about in a full-time role, right? So, I think, look, Iafallo, I think
all those guys are auditioning for their next contract which probably isn't with the Winnipeg Jets.
Right.
So that's just as important for them to perform well for the other 31 teams in the league as it is for them to perform well for the betterment of the Winnipeg Jets this year.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And And look, the Jets do have other options on the fourth line. Like, right, we've talked about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like David Gustafson's the 13th forward, but you've got, guys like Axel Jonsson-Fjallby and Dominic Toninato. Those guys can get called up in addition to Lambert and Chibrikov. So yeah, I think there is, a little bit of that internal pressure, and I say pressure in a good way. And you're right. I think, look, Kupari, I think he didn't play a full season. Obviously, he only played 30 or so games, and he didn't score a goal. But credit to Scott Arniel and the coaching staff for believing him and rewarding him for the good preseason and training camp that he had, and he's been good. And yeah, we're not going to get too excited for 2 or 3 or 5 games. And obviously, you want David Gustafsson to get back into the lineup sooner rather than later. But Kupari's been good, and that line has been good. Like Morgan Barron is on most teams. Like I think on a weak team, he's even a second line guy. Like I think Morgan Barron really is kind of that unsung hero on the fourth line, right? Like you just watch him, and the guy works hard. He's got a scoring touch. He's a big boy. He can throw that physicality around, and nobody's going to mistake him for Eric Lindros, but he's a guy that gets in on the forecheck. He digs up pucks, and he's got hands around the net, right, Dave? So like Morgan Barron is a guy too that I look at it, and going forward, he's a guy that probably wants more ice time. I don't think he's just happy to be a fourth line guy, but he obviously gets he gets a decent amount of ice time. It's not like he's getting 4 or 5 minutes like we saw back in the Nate Thompson, Trevor Lewis days, right, guys?
That's right.
So I mean, the fourth line has been a surprise, or not a surprise. I mean, they've just been good. I expected them to be good, but so far, guys, again, I mean, the Jets, the forward depth was their strength last year. It's their strength again this year. Things are going well. They got to keep it going. They're facing a Minnesota Wild team today without Joel Eriksson Ek, and they're coming in the second game of back-to-back. They were up on the Kraken yesterday, and they ended up losing in the shootout. And these Jets Wild games are always physical affairs. I mean, I'm with Kenny. I don't think there's necessarily going to be like 3 or 4 fights or anything like that. But Ryan Hartman's always going to be stirring the pot.
There's no question that the ramifications of last year are still going to be remembered by both dressing rooms. It's now 2 straight years where Jets players have knocked Kirill Kaprizov out of the lineup, and of course there's varying degrees of agreement when it comes to the dirty or not dirty effect of those hits. Logan Stanley falling on him, Brendan Dillon's cross check, but the Wild know that Kaprizov is been targeted by the Winnipeg Jets, and the Jets remember Ryan Hartman, targeting Cole Perfetti in retaliation. So anytime, as it was written about in yesterday's Free Press, Kenny spoke about it earlier, anytime there's that element of an extra element of intensity, and usually the slow developing early days of the October part of the season, it ramps things up a little bit. And the Wild played last night, so they flew into Winnipeg after going all the way to a shootout. So that theoretically they're a little bit on the tired side, and the Jets would want to capitalize on that. And without Joel Eriksson Ek, that's a huge loss out of the Minnesota Wild lineup. And we'll talk more about that after we bring in Marty Biron at the bottom of the hour. Let me ask you this, though, Dave, and we talked about it briefly. How much more of a leash do you give Perfetti, Ehlers, and the Mesnikov to figure things out? Because when it wasn't going well for the Jets last game against Chicago, Scott Arniel wasn't afraid to make a minor swap of the forward group. Mm-hmm. How much more, how much leash do you think those guys have if it's a struggle through the first period and a half in tonight's game?
I think it depends if you're winning or losing, to be honest with you. I think that winning right now masks certain things, and it gives you remember, you win today and you've got, they'll be off tomorrow. And so you've got Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So 3 days straight of practice. And that's going to give them, look, you talk about Perfetti. I mean, he missed 5 or 6 days of training camp while he was still skating with Moose guys. He wasn't building that sort of chemistry up again with those guys. And I think that as Kenny touched on, it hurt him a little bit in terms of being, a step off. And I'm not blaming Cole Perfetti solely for this, of course, but I'm just saying that I think that, while you're winning, it kind of allows you to have a little bit more latitude and a lot less concern than what would be the case if your team was losing. If you're 0-2, you're a lot less likely, Ezzy, to be casual and chill than being 2-0, having a chance. If you're 3-0 after tonight, and then thinking, well, now we've got San Jose and Pittsburgh. Again, neither team, led Stanley Cup contenders. So I think you want to give them that opportunity to have 3 days of practice together, really kind of set that tone through next week, and then give them at least a couple more games, provided everything stays the same. And then you say, okay, well, look, because like I said, there's no reason the Jets shouldn't be rolling against these clubs. And with the way the schedule is, it's really lent itself for Winnipeg to have a good October, similar to the October they had last year, right, guys? Out of the gate, they were a very good team. And so if they can do that, and it's helpful, it helps you later in the season. We always talk about it, Desi. These games in October, November, people tend to forget them. But when you're banking points, it's significant for your hockey club. And I think, again, if you continue to do that and then you factor it in, I think, Drew, these guys have a long leash based on that reality, that if the team is still winning, you're more likely to give them some time, even if you blend them a little bit in the third to try and get someone going but I ultimately think as long as the team keeps winning, they'll have a long leash.
I would agree with that. The thing though, that for me with the Ehlers, Perfetti, Nemesnikov line is it's Ehlers who's the play driver. It's Ehlers who you want to get going. And obviously the easy switch is to switch Ehlers and Connor and have Connor play on that line with Nemesnikov and Perfetti, because let's be honest, there's limited options here, right? Like Lowry, Niederreiter, Appleton, those guys play so well in their role, whether you call it a second line or a third line. But to me, that's what you need. You need to get Ehlers going. You need to figure out what's the magical combination of players to get Ehlers going. And obviously we know that that's Scheifele and Velarde. Yeah. But the way Connor has been playing with Scheifele and Velarde, like Dave said, to Dave's point, they've won 2 games in a row here. So you're not going to break that up. So it's going to be interesting to see, like here, after 3 games, after 5 games, 7, 10, and I do expect that line to get going. I wouldn't be surprised if the Nemesnikov line, gets on the board tonight or this afternoon versus the Wild, but it's definitely has not clicked. So we'll give Perfetti a little bit of the benefit of the doubt because he didn't play a full training camp. But that's what I would say is that it's my concern is more with Ehlers, because Nemesnikov, you're not expecting 60 or 70 points out of him like you are with Ehlers. Like Ehlers has got to be one of your top 3, top 4 scorers on the team. And through the first 2 games at 5-on-5, he's just been kind of average. The game against Chicago, I think we all agree he wasn't great, but again, it's only 1 game. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, but I don't expect any type of permanent change until, kind of later in the early part of the season, especially when the Jets are struggling offensively. Right now, the Scheifele line and the Lowry line have been leading the bus offensively with some contributions from the fourth line. So it's not that bad. But as we always talk about, you always want to have 4 lines going just for, the long-term success of the team, right?
Absolutely. Marty Biron, he's going to join us next. Also one of our favorites. It's a hell of a special Sunday of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Marty up next. We'll go to break. Stay tuned, everyone. Don't go anywhere. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, a special Sunday edition presented by our friends at Play Now. We're back Sunday morning. I was going to say Saturday, but it's not. It's Sunday morning. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. Bottom of the hour. Reminder, later on this evening, after the Jets and the Wild, the Illegal Curve post-game show, right around 7:30, 7:40, thereabouts later on tonight. Join us to discuss the Jets and the Wild. We're thrilled to welcome to the program our good friend, Marty Biron. Marty, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. I know you're probably in Buffalo, but can we still say happy Canadian Thanksgiving to you?
Oh, absolutely. You can say happy Thanksgiving to me any day of the year. I'll eat turkey and sit and watch football. That's my Thanksgiving. I love it.
That's a beautiful way to spend Thanksgiving. What's your favorite side dish? Everyone's got the turkey. What's the side dish that you can't miss on your Thanksgiving table?
Well, it's not a side dish, but it's a chocolate pecan pie dessert. So I'm not. Look, side dishes are great, but for me, it's all about the dessert. And that's what I go for.
I love it. That's a great way to start. You have to have the dessert. The sweet tooth after the savory is the way to go.
100%.
Yeah.
Marty, Drew actually ate a whole pumpkin pie right before we went live this morning.
Well, hey. You know what? I've done that in the morning too. So like that. I'm not going to judge. I'm not judging.
Sometimes you have to eat your emotions. That's all I'm going to say on that front there, Marty.
Where are you feeling emotional? I mean, the Jets are off to a good start. That should be like waking up feeling pretty good about how things have gone at the start of the year.
They certainly are in downtown at the in the dressing room. They're feeling good about the start. A little bit hairy pulling out that victory against the Blackhawks, but we'll start with the Jets. To your point there, I'm sure you've watched a fair chunk of both of the games. The impressive domination of the Edmonton Oilers on Wednesday, and then the less impressive victory against the Chicago Blackhawks on Friday. But looking at the Jets so far, what are you seeing from them in the very small sample size?
I am not going to downplay the win against the Chicago Blackhawks, because the more and more I watch the Blackhawks, I'm like, they've got nothing to lose. They are just going all out. Look at what they did to the Oilers last night. So the Blackhawks are not going to be an easy out. And they, the Jets didn't, saying, hey, we're going to start maybe Comrie instead of Hellebuck against the Chicago Blackhawks. No, they exactly what they needed to do. They created enough. They got robbed by Soderblom a bunch of times. So the offense has been so impressive in the way that they move the puck and how they've attacked the net. So that's the off.
Was Marty, you still there? You were sort of
yeah, I'm still here. I see that we have I think I may have a tough connection going on my end. So hopefully it settles down.
You're coming in nice and clear right now, Marty.
Yeah, no, I think I'm good now. But okay, all about offense. The offense was great. They moved the puck great. They attacked great. They scored 6, and they could have had another 6 against Chicago. That's what I've been impressed on the Jets.
Marty, we have other teams that we want to talk to you about, but obviously you not only did you used to play for the Sabres, obviously you cover the Sabres for MSG, and yesterday was obviously a huge win. I listened to you earlier this week on Sirius XM, and you were mentioning that, the 2 losses to the Devils, and obviously that's not how you want to start the season. And we have to give obviously a lot of credit to the Devils. They're a good team. But obviously that's a huge win, 5-2, 5 different goal scorers. What were your kind of main takeaways from last night's Sabres win over the defending Cup champs?
We'll struggle with, there you go.
You know what? Let me reconnect.
Okay, Marty, reconnect, and we'll see if we can get a better connection going.
Yeah, I'll reconnect. Give me a second.
Okay, sounds good. We're going to get Marty on a bit of a better connection because that one was intermittent.
It's usually us guys who has the bad connection, not our guests.
We're wired in now, as we got no bad connection issues. Yeah.
Oh, did you guys finally hardwire the computer?
True, we've been we've been hardwired for months now.
I had no idea.
What do you mean? Look how clear we are, for God's sakes.
We're like Sandra Bullock in the movie The Net. Like we're hardwired in right now.
Okay, well, I'm glad you guys finally listened to me for once, and
you remember that
first time. Are enjoying the
reference?
spoils of a dedicated Ethernet line. It's the little things in life, and a dedicated Ethernet line certainly might be one of them. So we're going to get Marty back on to talk about the Jets and other teams around the league. And the goaltending, of course, will be something that we discuss with Marty because he's so insightful on that area. About the Jets goaltending. Where do you see Comrie getting the start? To me, it seems like next Friday would be an opportunity, get him in a bit of an easier contest against a San Jose Sharks team, especially one that seems like it's going to be without Macklin Celebrini. Is that a start that you see for Eric Comrie this month?
I do, except for the fact that there's 4 days off between games, right? So that's the only thing is we're obviously, playing the guessing game right now, but I looked at that Sharks game, Drew, too, and I thought maybe that's Comrie's first start, but maybe you start Hellebuck against San Jose Friday night, and then you give that Sunday afternoon start against Pittsburgh, but we'll have to wait and see. It's a little tough to predict just because of that break, that 4-day break, right? So do you want Hellebuck, to get that start? You don't want him to go too many days without a start, obviously, right? But yeah, I would assume that it would be the San Jose game would be his first start, and if not, then maybe you give him that Pittsburgh game, because then you've got games coming up every 2 days. You got St. Louis on the road, Seattle on the road, Calgary, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't think you want Comrie to wait like 3 weeks or 4 weeks to get his first start necessarily. But yeah, that would be kind of my best guess, is that they go with San Jose, unless obviously they want to run Hellebuck because there's a 4-day break there.
Actually, I should highlight this comment from Mike B. This is maybe has some relevance. Hellebuck night is Friday against the San Jose Sharks. I think everybody, or however many thousands in attendance, get a Hellebuck pennant. So maybe they want him to be in the net there, and maybe instead of the Sharks game.
I'm not sure the Jets are looking when they're talking to Wade Flaherty about the schedule. Like, well, we have this promo night with Connor Hellebuck, so maybe we need him. No, I mean, I actually don't. I think Ezzy's rationale is, no offense to Mike, I think that it is interesting, but I think it's most like I actually think they'll give him the St. Louis game rather than that. But I think we got Marty back.
There you go. He's moved out. It's rare that you go outside.
Marty's switched cities.
Connection.
Marty's in Florida now.
And I got my AirPods now. We should be all good. I think my Wi-Fi is like crapping out on me inside the house. I'm like, let's go outside. We'll be better that way.
Marty, do you remember when you pulled over? You were with your kids and you pulled over and you got some Wi-Fi. That was a classic IC moment.
I remember I did one show one day. I was in the woods, like I was literally like lumberjacking it in the woods. But right now I'm like, you know what? It's not a bad day. It's a little rainy, but it's not cold out here in Buffalo. I'm just gonna go outside and we'll be better that way.
We appreciate that level of dedication. You were talking about the Sabres and the big victory yesterday after the slow start in the 2 games overseas. Touch on that victory. Do you think it was difficult for this Sabres team to maybe have to go overseas to start the season? Just trying to get that the new head coach, new old head coach in Lindy Ruff.
I think it was hard not going overseas as much as the way training camp was set up. So they played 2 preseason games early in preseason, which they played Pittsburgh and Columbus with nobody. Like it was basically the Sabres playing against AHL and junior players. And then they played against Red Bull Munich in Munich in Germany. So their 3 preseason games were against very much lesser competition. And then they got really an awakening against the New Jersey Devils. The first game, the first 5 minutes, the Sabres didn't get out of their zone. So I went to Europe with the Rangers to start the season, and we did the same thing where we went for 2 weeks. And I remember the first week I felt great. I had a shutout against the Prague team over there. I felt great. The second week I played a Swiss team. I lost 9-6. I gave up all 9 goals, and I felt like crap. I was like, I don't sleep. Like it's like the jet lag caught up to me the second week, and I almost feel like it did that to the Sabres. So my way of looking at it is they have an 80-game season to try to get 96 points and make the playoffs, right? So they lost the game to LA on home opener back in North America, and they played really well against the Kings, and they played the same way against Florida. Now, Florida didn't have Barkov and didn't have Tkachuk and didn't play Bobrovsky, so maybe that helped a little bit, but the Sabres looked way better. So let's put the first 2 in the trash. It would have been a bonus 4 points if you win like New Jersey did, but it didn't really happen.
Marty, nobody knows about goaltending relationships better than you. So how much of a factor does that connectivity with your whether you're the backup or the starter mean? And the reason I'm asking, of course, here in Winnipeg is we saw Eric Comrie sign on July 1st. And then later that day, Kaapo Kähkönen signed. There was a lot of conventional wisdom that it was going to be Kaapo Kähkönen's job and that Eric Comrie would go down to the Moose where he would be a mentor. But, we saw him in the last 2 preseason games. Then he's the backup in Edmonton. And they kept, of course, all 3 goalies because of Connor Hellebuck having a family matter that he had to attend to. But from your perspective, I mean, they share an agent, they train together, they've grown up in the system together. How much of a factor is that and that comfort when it came to who was going to be the backup here in Winnipeg?
Well, it definitely helps when you have that connection and that good relationship and success, right? Because we all know Connor Hellebuck had success with Eric Comrie as a backup. Eric Comrie had success playing with the Winnipeg Jets at the NHL level. So that really resonate with the organization, with the players themselves. Playing with Ryan Miller in Buffalo, I know that he enjoyed me as his backup, but he really enjoyed playing with Patrick Lalime as well. And me and Patty Lalime are very similar, right? Patty's doing TV in Montreal, covering the Montreal Canadiens. We're both outgoing, and it worked with Ryan Miller. And I think that's not just one individual, but it's the type of individual that you try to pair together. So for Hellebuck having Comrie there, it seems like it is a security blanket. And for Comrie to be in Winnipeg and with the same familiar setting where he had some success at work, I really like Eric Comrie. And I think his years in Buffalo, unfortunately, were not good for multiple reasons. Injuries, 3 goalies, the lack of success with the team. Like, it really was not a good fit when you look back at his time in Buffalo, but he is a great guy. I was really excited to see him sign in Winnipeg, and I'm excited now to see that he kind of outdueled Capo Kähkönen, and now Kähkönen is, gone to Colorado on waivers. So that's good for Comrie.
Marty Biron, our guest Sunday morning, a special Sunday edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show presented by Play Now. Marty, Connor Hellebuyck obviously is the driving force for the Winnipeg Jets. He is the backbone of everything that they do. When you're a goalie and you're coming off the exceptional season that he had last year, how difficult is it to prevent there being just a slight natural regression? It seems inevitable that there should be some sort of regression, but for Connor Hellebuyck, what's his mindset? How does he have to approach the season to ensure that regression isn't actually impactful to the team?
I think if you are a young goaltender, especially I'll say goalies, but a young player, and you have success early in your career, it's easy to say, oh, this is going to be easy. I'm going to play 15 years in the NHL. I'm going to win 6 Stanley Cups, and I'm going to be the Vezina Trophy winner, 4 times. Like, it's easy to think that way and not have that regression the very next year. That's why they call it sophomore slump, right? Or second-year slump. I think Hellebuyck has got enough experience and has had to grind through the American League and the NHL and get to where he's at now. He's got a lot of talent, but he has the experience to say, I know what works. I know my routine. I know what I need to get done. And you don't change from that. You stay on that same path. Dominik Hasek, for me, was one of the guy where he won an MVP. Well, you know what? I'll go and win another one. And that's the mentality. He won 6 Vezina Trophy. Like, that's always knowing what you need to be able to do for yourself to be at your best. And I think Connor Hellebuyck has found that. He's not like Vasilevsky. He's not like Shesterkin. He's not like all the other goalies in the league. He's very different in the way that he plays, but he understands what he needs to be successful.
I want to ask you about another goalie who I think you'll agree is most likely heading to the Hockey Hall of Fame. We've asked you about him before in the past. The reason why I ask you is because Minnesota's in town to play the Jets. Marc-Andre Fleury, of course, is who I'm talking about. Second all-time in wins. And I looked it up, by the way, Marty. You've got 230, so you're 78th all-time. So I want to get that in there as well. And I think you'll agree, Marc-Andre.
In 20 years from now, I won't be in the top 100. So I keep sliding.
I don't know. I think,
but you'll always have the video clip of Ezzy saying you were 78.
Yes,
no. But Marty, I think you're gonna stick in the top 80 for a while here. But obviously, Fleury mentioned this is going to be his last year, and there's a bit of a 3-goalie rotation happening with Wallstedt, and we're expecting it to be Philip Gustafsson because, of course, Fleury played last night versus the Kraken, didn't have the best night. But I mean, just how special do you think this year's going to be? Because, as I mentioned, I think many people expect him to be in the Hall of Fame, and how could he not? Right, second all-time wins behind Martin Brodeur. So. I mean, what are you expecting to see from Fleury this year with the Wild? Obviously, he's not going to play 60 games or anything like that, but he's obviously, going to be kind of that bridge to the future in the Wild crease, which is, of course, Jesper Wallstedt.
Yeah, I think with Marc-Andre Fleury, what you're going to see this year is a lot of personality and a lot of fun. Now, it's a lot more fun when you play well and you have some success. So it's cool. He goes out and shuffles the snow in a wig and mustache and a hat and in a disguise. And he's going to do a ton of those things. He's going to play pranks on everybody because that's Marc-Andre Fleury. But what we saw last year, it wasn't a really good hockey year for him in Minnesota. And I don't know. I mean, it's hard when you get to be older. And I didn't play as long as Flower is. But getting ready game after game or day after day is becoming more and more of a challenge. So he's a Hall of Famer for sure. He's one of the good guys of the National Hockey League. Never said a peep when Matt Murray came and basically took over in Pittsburgh. He had already won a cup, but he wanted more, and he helped the team win 2 more cups, and then he went to Vegas. And I just feel like Fleury is somebody everybody cheers for. And hopefully it's a good year, but it's Jesper Wallstedt time for me in Minnesota, and I want to see what he's got.
Marty, back in 97, 98, and 98, 99, when you were at the Rochester Americans, you had Mike Bales and Tom Draper. I had to look it up, though. I'm not going to pretend like I knew that. But those were your goaltending that was the goaltending tandem you formed with those guys.
Yep.
And the reason I bring that up is because here in Winnipeg with the Manitoba Moose, the thought was going to be that the two prospect goaltenders that were in the organization in Thomas Milic and Dominic DiVincentis were going to have one in the AHL, and then the other was going to be in the ECHL if they could slide Kakinen down to the AHL. Instead, for right now, you've got these two young 21, 20-year-old goaltenders, and Thomas Milic showed what he could do with the Moose last year. He took them from last place to first. But one of the things I talked to him over the summer about was how important that relationship was with Colin Delia and learning about professionalism. So I ask you this, how from that perspective, can two young goaltenders work in an organization? They're working with Drew McIntyre, who's a very good goalie coach, but from your perspective, is that a problem? Is that something they're going to have to maybe find a solution to, or do you think that's something that could work?
It doesn't have to be a problem. Look, when I played in the AHL, it was a lot different. There wasn't that veteran rule, and somebody that was 25 years old wasn't considered an experienced, matured veteran. We had some 30, 35-year-olds playing in the AHL. And Mike Bills was a veteran who had played college hockey and had played some games in the NHL, had been with the Ottawa Senators organization. And then Tom Draper had actually been with Buffalo with the Sabres and played in the IHL. So I really benefited from that as a 20 and 21-year-old. But as soon as I was 22, funny enough, they're like, okay, now, we want two young guys in Rochester. And when I started my third year in Rochester, it was me and Mika Norinen. Mika Norinen was a first-round pick of the Sabres. He ended up playing in the NHL. I played with him in Buffalo. And they wanted to see how competitive we could be with one another, how we could push one another. Like it was great. The veteran leadership was awesome for me for 2 years, but now it was about something else. Now, I got called up to Buffalo that year because Hasek got injured and I stayed in the NHL. But, I had to compete against Mika and, even though we're on the same team, you feel like you're going against one another. And so I think what's happening with the Moose right now is, okay, well, make that a situation where you can, learn from, you can get better from. And if you have two young guys, then have them compete. Like, I understand that they can't both play. And if you wanted to develop your young guys, one was probably going to develop in the AHL, the other one in the ECHL. They were going to both play a lot of games. Well, you know what? Then you accelerate the process and you make them compete against one another. And, there's good things to be learned from that as well.
Marty, last question for you. Igor Shesterkin reportedly turned down 8 years and $88 million, which would have given him the highest AAV in the history of the salary cap era for a goaltender. What price point would you be comfortable paying Igor Shesterkin?
Well, first of all, I want all goalies to get paid. But it's not like a quarterback in football where the quarterback is going to, hopefully, if healthy, start all 17 games in the NFL and have a major impact on how your team is going to do offensively, which is what you want to do. So I look at the goalies in the NHL, right? Allmark and Swayman, they're both fantastic. 8.25. Connor Hellebuck, $8.5 million. So for me, paying a goaltender $8, $9, even $10 million, I'm comfortable with that. Going over, I'm a little bit hesitant because what if they play 60 games? Like I know in the playoffs they should play every game and win your cup is what you want to do, but 60 games is a lot for a goalie in the NHL. So they play 3/4 of the season. Now, is a player $12 million value? Then you take 3/4 of that. That's about $9 million, right? That's my point, is that the best players making 12, 13, 14 million. 3/4 of that is about 9 to 10. But if we're going to look at Shesterkin and being paid $5.6 million the last 4 years and now wanting to make bank in the next deal, I think $11.5 million is probably where this should all settle around. I know Shesterkin has talked about 12 million plus, but I think 11.5 should probably be the number. But I watched the game last night, and I'm like, okay, Shesty, like you started bad last year. You didn't light it up last night. Like either you get it done, or you're not going to get that $11.5 million if you can't kind of get the wheels going.
Marty Biron, always one of our favorites. Always great to catch up with you. Thanks for working through the technical difficulties, and we'll do it again real soon. Hopefully, you'll do it from the outside in February when we got you in Buffalo again next time.
I've done that before in the middle of a snowstorm, guys. I can guarantee you it can be done.
And Marty, just quickly, I didn't get my Devin Levi question in. But I think you agreed he's going to have a huge year in Buffalo, so we're excited to watch him.
So. He was good in preseason. He would look comfortable and much more under control. So played well last night. But both goalies, Luukkonen's also played well. They both have given up 5 goals in 2 games. It's funny. 3-3, 2-2. It's like consistent, and hopefully it works.
Then at least the offense knows how many goals they need to score in order to get a victory there.
You
Marty, thank you.
4 goals, yes.
Happy Thanksgiving. Have a great Sunday. Enjoy the football today as well.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks Marty. Great. Always great to catch up with Marty Biron. We take our final commercial break. We come back, we wrap the show, and then, of course, we get you ready for Winnipeg Sports Talk Sunday Live coming up right after us at 11 o'clock. So don't go anywhere. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show on a special Sunday edition presented by Play Now. Big thanks to Ken Wiebe. Big thanks to Marty Biron for both joining us this morning on a special Sunday edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Always great to catch up with both of them. They always bring such great insight and analysis into the program. We'll be back Saturday next week. So we've done our co-faxing. We'll be back to not observing the Shabbos next Saturday for the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, 9 a.m. Next Saturday.
How was your break fast, Drew? People want to know, what did you eat? What did you do?
We had some kugel. We had some lasagna, vegetarian lasagna, Dave. Don't worry. We had some party sandwiches. There was some smoked salmon, some bagels and some cream cheese, a little bit of schmear. It was a very lovely break fast last night.
You know how I feel about party sandwiches. I mean, you leave me in a room alone with party sandwiches, there's a crime's going to be committed.
Well, just like they say on The Simpsons, you can't leave a pig alone with watermelon. That's the same thing with Ezzy and party sandwiches. You just can't do that.
Oh, it's true. Like tuna, egg, salmon. I like it all.
Yes, this quite possibly could be the most Jewish segment of the show we've ever done, and that's saying something. But
listening to you say, I could listen to you say kugel all day long.
Well, I enjoy a good kugel every now and then as well. I'm sure Dave M does as well. He seems like he's
I hate kugel actually.
Really?
Don't eat it. Yeah.
Why?
Nah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You think it should be sweeter, or you think it should be?
No, I don't eat it.
You just don't eat it. It's just Dave is avoiding it altogether, is what he's saying.
I'm a 5-year-old kid. If I don't like it the way something looks, I don't eat it.
Dave goes right to the commish.
Dave's a dessert guy when it matters most. In any event, big thanks to everyone for joining us this morning, the special Sunday edition of the show, the Sunday edition of the post-game show. After the Jets and the Wild, there'll be much to discuss. Yours truly, Dave M, will be back around 7:45, 7:40, somewhere in there to bring you the latest on the Winnipeg Jets and the Minnesota Wild. Want to say a big thank you to all the sponsors of the show who help support this program, help support the post-game show. Of course, Play Now. They're the title sponsor of all of our broadcasts. Don't bet on illegal sites. Bet with Play Now instead. Manitoba's local, legal, and secure gambling site, 18 plus. Please enjoy responsibly. Our other great sponsors, our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club. Great week just concluded at Rumors. Derek Stroop performed before sold out show after sold out show. Great week upcoming, of course, at Rumors as well. Tickets available at rumorscomedyclub.com. Our friends at Holt Dental, as he said, plenty of free parking is his new favorite line. So you can check that out. Holt Dental on Taylor Avenue. City Place, we're going to be there on the Monday of the Leafs game. We're doing a noon hour show there on the Monday. I think that is the 28th of October, if I'm not mistaken. Noon hour at City Place every month this year. Looking forward to that. And of course, we were at Boston Pizza this past week, and then later on, and so we'll be there again in November. And then, of course, later on tonight, we're happy to give out the Seagram's shot of the game. So support all of these fine sponsors because of their support of Illegal Curve Hockey. Dave, go ahead real quick.
Well, Drew, since you wouldn't let me do it last week,
do it tonight.
No. We're going to do it right now. You know why?
Put on your antlers. It's time for the Minuk Moose Minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
No, Absolutely not.
Wow.
No.
That was incredible.
No. End the broadcast.
What was that?
That is the worst thing. That's horrible. That is awful.
So it was Monday. It was production day at the Moose.
Help us all.
At the
Dave,
Moose.
play that again. I need to see that again. Play it
One more time. Okay, one more time.
Put on your antlers. It's time for the Minuk Moose Minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
It's the best thing I've ever seen.
So, anyways, the Moose had asked me to send them our image, which, by the way, looked actually amazing. They put it on the Jumbotron, Drew, that the vector image we had of IC.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know why they wanted me to send it to them, but I'm like, sure, I'll send it to you guys, whatever. And so I was on the ice, and the players were like Henry Nikkanen's on the ice, Daniel Torgerson, Parker Ford. And then all of a sudden
they immediately asked for a trade away from the
they
organization.
moved. No, they just said, "Hey guys, get out of the way. Minuk's on the ice. We need that." And then all of a sudden they're like, so there was a little lull in the time, and then Daniel Fink, who's the play-by-play voice and head of communications, says, "Okay, now go stand where the players were standing." I'm like, "Why?" They're like, "Well, now it's your time." And like literally, they've got that like little camera going around me. I'm like, "There's no way I'm doing this." And then of course, immediately I did it. And then they sent it to me, and I was like, well, this is going to be the most amazing intro to the Minuk Moose Minute. And so, of course, I was very excited. It was very hard for me to keep it quiet. And, I only one person knew that was a fan of the show, and that would be Joe from Winnipeg, who was, of course, with us at Boston Pizza. And he had read in the post I did on about the production, behind the scenes at the production day. He asked me, what was that little secret I said at I teased at the last line. I said, stay tuned. And then sure enough, I had to unveil it. Anyways, quick Moose Minute though. Moose did get into action last night. First game of the season, playing the Iowa Wild. So the farm team of the Minnesota Wild. They have a rematch today at 3:00. It was a scrambly game, but it was a good one. Moose ended up winning 6-4. Elias Salamonts in the Jets, big Jets prospect who's down there. He scored his first AHL goal. He had an assist as well. Nikita Chibrikov goal and 2 assists. Brad Lambert had 2 assists. Parker Ford had a shorthanded goal and an assist. So the kids were all right. And Thomas Milic made 24 saves in the win, and they have a rematch today at 3:00.
There you go. More Moose talk later tonight on the Illegal Curve post-game show after they play the Iowa Wild. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Go to the Winnipeg Sports Talk channel. They have started WST Sunday Live, continues this Super Sunday of sports talk. We'll see you later on for the Illegal Curve post-game show. For Dave Minuk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mandel. If it's Sunday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Thanks for listening to this broadcast from Illegal Curve Hockey. For more great Illegal Curve content, subscribe to the Illegal Curve YouTube channel, follow @Illegal Curve on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and visit your online home for hockey in Winnipeg, illegalcurve.com.